That is bright. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you to VoiceStory for allowing me to speak. I'm not going to lie, Winston, when he rang me and asked me to speak on perseverance, I laughed in his face. I said, "Are you serious? You want this middle-aged, cynical Irishman to talk about perseverance?" And I've struggled with what to say here tonight. I certainly know what I want to say. I know what I could say. And I'm going to share with you guys in the audience what I've come up with to say. So on the 11th of December, 2022, I got a phone call that we all hope we'll never get. It was a Sunday afternoon, and it was my mom calling me, which wasn't really very strange. I usually spoke to my mom and my dad every weekend. When I picked up the phone and I saw her face, I instantly knew something was wrong. And what she said to me next is probably going to haunt me for the rest of my life. She said, "Robert, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm very sorry. There's been an accident, and your father is dead." I had been sitting down having a cup of tea, and I was just sitting there saying, "Dad is dead? Dad is dead?" Fast forward a week, and I find myself back in my family church in Dublin, surrounded by friends, family, acquaintances, and my father's coffin. The task of giving his eulogy has ironically fallen to me. And I say ironically because I've spent the best part of my adult life persevering in overcoming a stutter to become a proficient speaker. And I'll explain why that's important in a minute. Now, I'd given speeches, I'd given workshops, but I'd never given a eulogy. And this was my father's eulogy. And I was sitting in the church, waiting for the service to end, and my sister kept asking me, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I couldn't answer her. I didn't know. For the first time in my life, I had no idea whether I was going to speak or stutter up on that stage. So when the time came, I put on my game face, I stood up. I had practiced my speech, I had made little notes just in case I lost my train of thought. And for 10 minutes, I gave my father the send-off I hope he'd be proud of. Everybody clapped. A few people cried. Even the priest looked impressed. And looking down at my mom, I could see the pride and gratitude in her face. And for me, I felt relieved that I was able to do that for him, to show that all the perseverance and work in overcoming my stutter had shown up in those 10 minutes. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I was also looking at all my friends and family and acquaintances, people who I hadn't seen in over a decade, people who had gotten married, had kids, bought a house, had careers. And as I looked down at my dad's coffin and just death, how suddenly it can come, I began to question, have I been persevering chasing the wrong goals? You see, Dad had told me when I was 11 years old that life is hard, Robert. I was 11, very scrawny 11-year-old, and I was putting gas in his car. And I found it hard. It was a heavy pump, what can I say? And Dad wasn't wrong. Life was hard. I had been bullied in school, and I don't know what I did or said to warrant the attention or the wrath of these bullies. And the effect it had on me was to, A, have me start to develop a stutter, which was gradually getting worse, but also this question, what did I do to not fit in? And how do I fit in? On top of the stutter, I was also gay. And I think Dad, even at 11, sensed I was gay and knew I wasn't going to be in for the easiest path. And I can remember him saying, life is hard. And I taking that on board to mean, life will be hard for me. Life will be extra hard for me. So I'm going to need to become very good at perseverance and work harder than anyone else to fit in. And that really set me on my path. In school and college, I basically avoided any speaking situation, whether it was face-to-face or on the dreaded telephone. But After I graduated, I knew I would have to deal with my stutter. And I took a leap of faith. I found a group called the Maguire Program, which was run by people who stutter for people who stutter. And I think it was the first time in my life I ever felt like I fit in. These were people who also cried when they couldn't say their name, or they'd get very frustrated when you couldn't ask for a Mars bar in the shop, for example. One of the girls there told me on my first course that I had a beautiful voice. And that was probably the nicest thing anyone had ever said to me in relation to my speech. They also had tools and techniques that I could learn. And I persevered with these tools and techniques. I loved these tools and techniques. I became very proficient. And I volunteered my time. I got on the phone list. I went to every course. And that feeling of fitting in, I could feel it beginning to ebb away, because after a year or two, these tools and techniques, which had been so liberating, began to feel quite stifling. I was told that I had to speak in this way, and I wanted more. I had joined Toastmasters. I'd even gone back to school to get a diploma in television performance and presentation, and that's what led me here to Vancouver, to acting school. I wanted to work in science fiction and be on the bridge of a battle cruiser, firing at lasers and raising shields and getting to phone home and go, "Hey Mom, I've just saved Earth again." And I even came out in acting school very late in life, and no one cared, because we were all performers learning this craft, and there was something of self-expression there that I was chasing after. It was looking for who is authentically Robert. But again, after about a year or two of perseverance, acting class, going to auditions, my stutter, when I was on a set, facing real actors, people who knew who they were, people who had faith in their own ability, I couldn't keep it together. And that was horrifying. That was... I'd given up everything to come here. I'd sacrificed so much, and I was so close. So I began to journal. And my journal eventually became a manuscript, which eventually became a book, which I called Just One More Drive, the true story of a stuttering homosexual in his race car. I thought that was a brilliant title, but now that I've had to say it so many times, I'm like, we could have edited that down slightly, because it is a mouthful. But with the book, it was the same pattern of perseverance. Work harder, pitch harder. The book eventually became a book, and I had it. And now I was going to have to work harder. I was going to have to be like J.K. Rowling and be a success, because I couldn't be fluent all the time. I discovered, by the by, that I was a covert stutterer, so I can hide it in certain situations. Ironically, giving a speech like this feels quite safe, but making a phone call still terrifies me. So I was never going to be fluent. I also had to accept I was never going to be an actor. And I was clinging to this idea of being an author. The book would surely validate me, wouldn't it? And then Dad dies. Gone, just like that. And I can remember bitching to him, saying, I work so hard, I work harder than everyone else. And it forced me to have to stop and pause and actually look at what I'd been doing. Because as amazing as perseverance is, and it is amazing, I'm not going to stand here and say it's not. The hard work, resilience, picking yourself up, these are amazing traits that we all need to be successful in our lives, in whatever form that takes. But I was looking at the pitfalls I'd fallen into, and I identified 4 of them. The first one was, I never had any clear goal. I want to be a fluent speaker. Okay, that's brilliant. What does that mean? Does that mean using my stuttering tools and techniques and being in control of my speech? Or does it mean never stuttering again? I didn't know, and they weren't even achievable. The second pitfall I saw was I kept moving my own goalposts. First, I wanted to be fluent to fit in. Then I wanted more. I was going to be an actor to fit in. Then when that didn't work, panic, jump. I'm going to be an author. Then I'm going to fit in. And I kept moving the goalposts. And that forced me to keep moving and working and persevering and starting again without ever having any end result or any real satisfaction. The third pitfall is the obvious one, the time and money that's been touched on here in other speeches tonight. I've spent, I'm not going to say waste because that does a disservice. I've spent 20 to 25 years chasing this goal. And those are years I'm never going to get back. And I do fear that my best years are behind me because I am tired. Money, I've spent money that I could have bought a house with. I could have maybe done a PhD. You know, maybe having letters after my name would have validated me. I should have thought of that sooner. But that's also money I'm not going to get back. But the biggest pitfall, and this is where I struggled with this whole speech, who was I doing this for? I could lie and say it was for the bullies. I was going to show those bullies, you haven't broken me. I'm on television. I'm an author. You know, suck it. But the truth is, these bullies hadn't thought of me in 3 or 4 decades. I could say it was my family and friends, but they all thought I was fine just the way that I am. And then the horrible realization was, I think I've been doing it for me, having to prove it to myself. Because there's a part of me that still resents the child me not being strong enough to fight those bullies back. What if I had fought back? What if I had pushed back? Would I be stuttering? Would I be standing here? Would I be talking about the endless perseverance? I don't know. And I don't like the person I've become. I am cynical. I have become bitter. I can hear it. I can feel it. It's my default. It takes conscious effort now to actually smile and go, yes, it's a sunny day, isn't it? Where really it's like, no, the sun burns my skin and I don't want to get burned because I'm here alone and then I'm going to suffer alone with blisters and I won't find anyone to love me with a blistered, sunny mess. So where does that leave me? This speech has been a huge challenge, and death of a parent as well is, as painful as it is a gift. It's a gift in the sense that it does force you to stop. And Dad once told me it was never about the work or the perseverance or the effort. It was about the person I had become through doing all these actions. And I know he is right. I feel it. Very small in my heart. I feel it when I let it be felt. And I want to leave you with a quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's by George Eliot. And he once said, "It's never too late to be who you might have been." And as I get older, that resonates more and more because it points to the opportunity of starting again. There's always a second chance, a third chance. There's always hope of new beginnings, even for people like me. And I think that is the true gift of what perseverance is. Once you have a goal and you're committed to it, while also knowing what the potential pitfalls are, then life really does become a game, and you do have the opportunity to choose. And that's the one thing we all have power over. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.